Have you ever left a conversation feeling completely drained, even though you didn't do anything physically exhausting? Or spent a few hours with someone and then needed days to recover? There's actually a psychological and neuroscientific explanation for this that'll help you understand a lot about relationships that drain your energy without you even realizing it. The truth is, some people function like emotional vampires. Not necessarily because they're ill-intentioned, but because the dynamic they establish with you requires a disproportionate amount of energy expenditure. And your body knows this before your mind can even put it into words. You feel the fatigue, the tension, that inexplicable urge to leave. But because the person hasn't done anything objectively wrong, you ignore these signals and stay there, wearing yourself down. Daniel Goleman, psychologist and author of Emotional Intelligence, explains that our brain is constantly making unconscious readings of our social environment. It picks up on microfacial expressions, tone of voice, body language, and processes all of this in milliseconds. When it detects something threatening or uncomfortable, it activates the sympathetic nervous system, putting your body on high alert. And staying on constant alert for hours drains your mental and physical energy reserves as if you were running from a predator. There are people who keep you in a constant state of vigilance. It might be because they're emotionally unpredictable, because they criticize all the time, because they make jokes at your expense, because they monopolize every conversation, because they play the victim nonstop. Each of these behaviors triggers something in your nervous system that says, "Watch out." And even if you're not consciously perceiving the danger, your body is spending energy protecting itself. Another factor that's exhausting is what psychologists call vicarious emotional regulation. This happens when you constantly need to manage another person's emotions. You know that person who's always in crisis, always needing advice, always with some new drama? Every time you interact with them, your brain goes into problem-solving mode. You feel like you need to comfort, calm, offer solutions. And this consumes cognitive and emotional energy at incredibly high levels. The problem is that many of these people aren't really looking for solutions. They're seeking constant validation, attention, or simply someone to dump their anxieties on. And you, without realizing it, become the emotional dumping ground. Every time they see you, they unload everything on you, and you leave carrying a weight that isn't yours. That's why you feel exhausted, because you are literally processing emotions that weren't even yours to begin with. Marsha Linehan, creator of dialectical behavior therapy, talks about the importance of healthy interpersonal boundaries. People who don't respect your limits force you into constant energy expenditure to maintain them. These are the ones who call at inappropriate times, who ignore when you say no, who invade your physical and emotional space without asking permission. Each small invasion is a battle your nervous system has to fight. And by the end of the day, you're exhausted just from existing near them. Then there are those people who live in an emotional frequency that's incompatible with yours. Imagine you're in a moment of peace, seeking balance, trying to build a lighter life. And then there's someone who lives in constant chaos, drama, negativity, endless complaining. The dissonance between where you are and where that person is creates wear and tear. It's like trying to meditate next to a jackhammer. You need way more effort to stay centered, and that's tiring. Neuroscience shows us something fascinating about this through mirror neurons. These cells in our brain fire both when we perform an action and when we see someone else performing it. That's why when we see someone smiling, we tend to smile too. But it works for negative emotions as well. When you're around someone anxious, your brain starts to mirror that anxiety. If the person is irritated, you absorb part of that irritation, and your body reacts as if the emotion were yours, spending energy to process it. That's why after spending time with someone deeply negative, you leave feeling heavy, even if you tried to keep your spirits up. It's not that you're weak or easily influenced, it's that your brain is biologically programmed to synchronize with the people around you. And if those people are in a constant state of suffering, you pay the neurological price for it. Now, there's a specific type of person who's more draining than all the others. The narcissist. Not necessarily the clinical narcissist, but people with strong narcissistic traits. They make everything revolve around them. They monopolize conversations, show no genuine interest in you, react poorly when they're not the center of attention, and somehow always turn any topic into something about themselves. Interacting with these people is like doing a job where you give everything and get nothing in return. It's a one-sided relationship, and one-sided relationships are, by definition, exhausting. What's most draining in these dynamics is the lack of emotional reciprocity. You listen, you care, you show up, you make an effort. But when you need something, the person isn't available in the same way. They might even fake interest for a few minutes, but soon steer the conversation back to themselves. And you leave these encounters feeling empty, because you gave a lot and received almost nothing. And the human brain registers this. It knows when it's in emotional deficit, and it responds with fatigue as a way of warning you. This relationship isn't sustainable. If you recognize yourself in this situation, you need to understand something fundamental. Feeling tired around certain people is a sign that your body is giving you important information. It's telling you that relationship is costing more than it should, and that you need to do something about it. Start paying attention to how you feel before and after being with each person. If you systematically feel worse afterward, that's valuable information. Don't ignore it, and don't blame yourself for it. You're not obligated to maintain closeness with someone who drains you just because they didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes the incompatibility is subtle, but real. Setting boundaries is essential. It could be limiting the time you spend with that person, avoiding certain topics, or even distancing yourself completely if the relationship is too toxic. And no, that's not selfish. It's self-care. Your emotional energy is a limited resource, and you have the right to choose where you invest it. It's also important to recognize when you need professional help to deal with these dynamics. A therapist can help you identify relationship patterns you repeat without realizing, work on your difficulty saying no, or process why you feel obligated to emotionally support people who don't reciprocate. Therapy isn't a luxury. It's a tool for emotional survival. And if you notice you're constantly exhausted in your relationships, that's a clear sign it's worth seeking that support. Another thing that helps a lot is cultivating relationships that energize you. Yes, they exist. They're those people you spend hours with and leave feeling light, renewed, happy. Where conversation flows, there's genuine reciprocity, and you don't need to perform or protect yourself. These relationships work as a counterbalance. They remind you that healthy relationships don't drain, they nourish. And if you realize you're being the person who drains others, if people start to distance themselves, if your relationships are always tense, if you feel like nobody really listens to you, you might be on the other side of this dynamic. And it's okay to recognize that. The first step to change is awareness. Seeking therapy, working on your emotional issues, learning to self-regulate instead of depending on others for it, all of this makes a difference. In the end, relationships should add to your life. They don't need to be perfect, but they need to have some balance. And when you feel you're constantly in deficit, that you give more than you receive, that you leave every interaction exhausted, your body is trying to tell you something. Listen to it. Because preserving your emotional energy isn't being too selective. It's having enough wisdom to choose where you want to invest your life.